And we are live. Welcome to my video. This is going to be a spoiler-free review of Cube Escape Paradox Chapter 2, the 2018 DLC to the game Cube Escape Paradox, which is part of the Rusty Lake franchise. And let's see, so the usual, there will be absolutely no spoilers, not only for this game, or DLC, but for anything Rusty Lake in this video. Absolutely love this game. The game is like M for mature or something like that. So will this video be. And this video will be building on what I've said in other videos on Rusty Lake, so that I'm not restating a bunch of stuff. So it's probably, there's at least going to be parts that are difficult to follow if you haven't watched any of the others. Yeah, as per usual, this one has some of my new favorite puzzles of the entire franchise. That's happened with each of these. And of, like, point-and-click adventure games in general. I really appreciated some of the differences between this and Chapter 1. It is still escape room formula. You wake up in this room that is nice, but there's also this kind of sinister vibe to it, and you want out. You're not sure how you got there. Yeah, it's a scary situation to find yourself in. But this time, I'm not going to give away exactly how much, but I will say there is more in the way of you interacting with other characters without it losing the very claustrophobic edge of Chapter 1. And yeah, I maintain one of the best things about this franchise, at least up to this point. It's possible it'll change in one of the next ones, is these interactions with other characters that, like, in a lot of point-and-click games can be kind of messed up, some of the stuff you do, but Rusty Lake really leans into it. It's like, no, you don't get it. Hold my beer. Hold my brewery. Some of the stuff you're going to be doing with, around, and sometimes to actual living individuals, you know, not always humans, but humanoids, you're gonna, you know, clear your mind of nightmare fuel. You're about to get a new load. And yeah, there's some of that here. And let's see, this has some of the most obscure of the puzzles so far, which, you know, that's one of those things that's, whether that's a positive or a negative really depends on the individual player. But it is something that Rusty Lake prides itself on. You know, if you're, you know, this is not exactly the very first of these. You know, actually, let's see, I have it right here. This is the 4th entry, if you're going by release order, which I did, and I now, you know, of on Steam, I mean. And I do appreciate this is actually technically like the 10th, or I guess 11th, since it's Chapter 2, but yeah, it is not the first Cube Escape, you know, title. But yeah, if you're playing them by this point, although, as I said in my review of Chapter 1, it's a great entry point, you know. I mean, there's stuff you're not going to appreciate fully, but, I mean, any of these is a solid entry point. The thing with that one is that it's, let me just make absolutely certain before I say what I think, because I do not wish to, okay, so click this, then we click this, that should take me to it. Yeah, Chapter 1, Cube Escape Paradox, is free. And as such, you know, if you're not sold on the franchise yet and you want to test out, yeah, really strong entry point. And yeah, if you get all the way through that one and you're like, I'd like more, please. If you buy this one, yeah, it goes even further with these obscure puzzles. And the they continue to have a really strong grasp on expectation. Sometimes it is subverted, other times it is lived up to or down to, depending on your point of view. See, that's the thing with keeping these vague enough that you don't know exactly. That was not a criticism. I'm referring to the fact that some of these endings are very much downer endings, and you see and you might realize, oh, this is going in a bad direction, I do not like this, but it's Grecian tragedy kind of, you know, downer ending. You might see it coming, but you're powerless to do anything about it. You just, and because it's not a stage play, but it's a game, an interactive game, you might be doing things that cause the bad thing to happen. You know, so yeah, absolutely love that. I think, you know, other than Rusty Lake, frictional games, several of those also really nail that sort of thing. It's difficult to get right, because you might end up with a bunch of players saying, how did you, I wasn't supposed to be the bad guy, I wanted to play the hero, you know. It's very much a expectation kind of, you need to have the right kind of expectations for games like these. And that is something you see with negative reviews. Sometimes it's just people saying this wasn't what I expected, which I don't think is the most useful in terms of negative reviews, unless you explain what it is that is delivered, what you expected, and why you expected it. Because a lot of the time it's an issue of marketing, not the actual game itself or piece of media in general. I have to say, because the following is something that if I hadn't already been pretty down, like, I knew I wanted to play more of these, you know, pretty early in playing the very first one, you know, but if not, I'm saying the following in part because if you're watching this and you haven't made up your mind about this franchise, or at least you haven't gotten this far and you're like, I don't know, this is the kind of thing that would have made me straight up, like, yeah, decide that I wanted to play. And I'm not trying to sway your decision, I'm just saying, in this, you get to go to different times in that room, of course, but that is just such a cool element, and it's used so well because, like, the moment, you know, you might have picked up on how cool it is that you get to actually, you know, like, in general, it's almost always really cool when a piece of media takes the viewer or player or whatever to different periods in time. But when it's in a video game and you get to switch, you get to choose when to go back and forth, that's already cool. But because it's a puzzle game rather than just, you know, there are games where it is just like, I mean, you can travel in time in BioShock Infinite, and, you know, I still hold that game in fairly high regard. I know there are people who disagree with me on that. Well, they don't disagree that I hold in high regard, but they disagree as to my, you know, they disagree with my assessment of its quality. But, and this isn't really a spoiler, I guess I'll keep it vague. For at least some of that game, you don't really choose to travel in time so much as you just tell the game, okay, sure, let's travel in time. You know, the game has chosen when to travel to and when to travel. It's more like a, well, you know, you sure you want to do this now? Do you want to explore a little bit because this is sort of a point of no return? That sort of thing. No, in this you actually do get to, you know, it's similar to how in Silent Hill Origins you get to choose some of the time. I forget if it's all of the time, and regardless, I'll keep it vague. At least some of the time, you get to choose when to move between the other world and the real world, or the Silent Hill brand equivalent of the real world. It's not completely the real world, or arguably up for debate. And that's not the best Silent Hill game, but that was a really cool thing that let you do. And yeah, what both of these do with that is it really opens up the puzzles to where you really have to think. Like, there is basically no way to brute force this thing. I pity the fool who would even attempt such a thing. And yeah, I think it's such a cool thing, because like the moment you realize, like as I was playing it, I was like, oh, time travel, that's so cool. And then I was like, oh no, that's gonna make it so much more difficult, because now there's so many more things to take into account, you know. So that's such a wonderful element here, and it really does, you know, like the moment that you do an escape room, you really have to be careful. In video game form, I have no idea about the real world. I understand the appeal of doing an escape room in real life. That's all I'll say. And I guess watching, there's at least one movie, which an argument could be made that's at least one more than there should be. Like, isn't the fun of it actually getting to do it? Anyway, maybe there's people out there who love that movie. That's great. I'm happy for you. When you do it in a video game, you do have to, there has to be a balance, because in a video game, if the player is stuck in the same basic area for very long, it could end up feeling kind of tedious and boring. You get used to it after a while. And the time travel is a phenomenal way to keep it from growing stale, you know. And I'm not saying that Chapter 1 grew stale. I think it is more important here in Chapter 2, in part because it is, in fact, the last chapter of Cube Escape Paradox. You know, there is no Chapter 3. You cannot go there. It does not exist. But it's also on account of how, yeah, some of the puzzles here are so difficult. So the fact that you can now travel in time also, and that you're still confined to the room, which is such a wonderful, it's again, like, these games are so good at the illusion of freedom. And using that, not just having it as, like, because, like, the moment you know, when you think a game has given you freedom, you're like, oh, that's so cool, you know, there's so many games that don't, and I'm not saying I'll have to. And then when you realize, oh, no, I'm not actually free, you know, that does something, because there's so many games where you just aren't free, and they never bother with the illusion. And again, I'm not saying that's always a bad thing, but when you have that illusion, and then pull the rug out from underneath, you know, the player, because I would argue, at least so far, the ones I've played up to and including this one, at some point you will realize it was an illusion. And what that does is make you realize you really don't have freedom, and you sort of, when you thought you did, you were ecstatic. And now you feel more trapped than ever. And again, obviously for some people that's going to be like, okay, you know what, I'm not playing this game anymore. Literally. But for the intended audience, it is scintillating, you know. And yeah, I think that does pretty well cover. You know, once again, I do think they do just enough to guide, you know, it's basically you have to get on the wavelength of these games in order to understand what you're meant to do. It's not really expecting you to just try out everything, which, you know, as much as I love, you know, the first 3 Monkey Island games, especially that third one, I will grant all 3 of them have at least some puzzles where it's like, how was I meant to figure that out? And just, yeah. 90s games were just extremely difficult sometimes, you know, that was part of the... That was just a thing they did, you know, and that's either going to be something that really frustrates you, or you're going to go with... I try to go with it. Doesn't always work. But I do really appreciate that here, you know, that is the thing. Like, if they ever did... I mean, they did already remaster the first two, but if they were going to, again, I think it would be great if they had just a little bit more... Well, let's see, I mean, there's like hint systems, so I appreciate that, but... Yeah, I do think they do such an incredible job with these. Like, I honestly don't think there's even one puzzle in one of these first five. Wow, yeah. Because there's the three, there's Rusty Lake Hotel, Roots, Paradise, and then Chapter 1 of this. This is Chapter 2, whatever. Yeah. I might need sleep soon. In these 5... entries in the Rusty Lake franchise, I would argue there isn't really even one puzzle that is just 100%, you know, you're on your own and it's really difficult. Like, there are ones where you're kind of on your own, but they're not super difficult. You can deduce, you know, without, like, a lot of hinting and such. You can tell, oh, okay, I mean, I must be meant to do this. Yeah, at this point, the one... right, no, yeah, I'd just be repeating myself. Okay, the one thing that I still find, I wish, I hope, you know, there's several games left, maybe they've fixed it. Sometimes you'll be dealing with a puzzle, and the game kind of expects you to keep clicking multiple times on the same basic thing, instead of it just being, you know, okay, well, you've clicked, you know, yeah, you've clicked once on that spot, that activates that spot, or, well, you've solved the puzzle, so now it just moves on, you know. I think if they just had some sort of visual indicator, and I think it's maybe because when, you know, if you play one of these on your smartphone or tablet or that sort of thing, touchscreen, yeah, you know, you clicking a bunch of times without much of an indicator, you know, sure, fine. I hope one of the next ones, you know, now, you know, these versions that are on computer, that, like, if you're meant to click on the same spot more than once, there's some sort of indicator. Just like if you click once on a spot and you're meant to click again, if the mouse would, like, if a cursor would light up or so, I'm not expecting them to make your actual physical mouse light up. Anyway, something like that. There were times, you know, it's no longer to the point where I'm accidentally messing up something because I'm trying to click on the spot, but it thinks I'm trying to move something, and, you know, they dealt with that. They're clearly, they really listened to feedback on these. Each one of them has something that a previous one, you know, did not. Yeah. Let's see, because there are times where, you know, I realize, okay, I guess I must be meant to click again, but there were times where I, like, clicked away because I was like, okay, I guess that's not the entire solution, and then eventually I'd just be like, oh, wait, I guess I meant to click again, because there have been other times where I was. So I tried again, and it worked. You know, I wish that they would, you know, do that. Like, I'll grant, it makes sense if there's, like, if there is some sort of conversation, you know, these games don't, at this point at least, didn't really do, like, dialogue trees and that sort of thing. But, you know, if there's, like, some text on the screen and, you know, a voice speaks that line, an argument could be made, okay, I guess I must be meant to be clicking on the character who spoke. And they're, like, in this one at least, I forget if the other ones, but in this one, there are times where you are meant to prompt your character to speak a line, you know, and then the line will be on the screen, and you just click on the words, you know. But other than that, there are other times where, you know, okay, you solved a puzzle and you're supposed to get an object from it, but in order to get that object, not only do you have to solve the entire puzzle, you have to click like 2 or 3 times on the same spot. Like, I don't know, maybe they did just intend for us to always click 2 or 3 times on the same spot after solving a puzzle, but then there's all those times where that's not what you're supposed to do. You know, it's not gonna like screw something up for you, but it does just feel kind of awkward. And yeah, I hope that it is fixed in one of the upcoming ones. You know, I do own all of these, will be playing them, you know, 1 every 3 games until I'm all the way through. Yeah. I will just briefly say, recently the editing room did, you know, both the animated original and the Rachel Zegler versions of Snow White. And both scripts are well worth reading. I quite love the animated original. I've heard very bad things about the remake, but, you know, I try to watch all these Disney ones. It's not going to be in theaters. I'm not going to be watching it in theaters. I'll watch it when it's free on Disney Plus. But anyway, I did think that the commentary and jokes were some of the, in the editing room abridged script of the movie were some of the best that I've heard about the movie. And I really quite appreciated how they pointed out, you know, Rachel Zegler, and apparently also the character of Snow White in the movie. The preaching, what I've heard some refer to as woke scolding, you know, that can get annoying, and I do appreciate, I personally try to make it funny and or like not have like a bunch of it clumped together in any one of my videos, you know. But yeah, I am aware, and as far as I understand, the author of the you know, I'm gonna make sure to get her name real quick because she is so freaking talented. Whenever she's done a musical, you know it's gonna be amazing. She does. Jess M is her name. She does such phenomenal parody lyrics for each one of these. Each one she does. But yeah, you know, as far as I understand, she herself leans left, or at the very least is not like hardcore conservative based on the tone of her reviews. You know, that's what she comes across as, you know. But so it's not that I don't get the sense that she's saying these are actually bad values to have. It's more that just like, okay, we get it though. It's that thing about, you know, how do you know if someone's a vegan? They'll tell you that sort of thing. And I'm not dissing vegans. I think it's very admirable. I would like to become vegan right now. There are various reasons why I'm not vegan yet, but I do definitely agree that it is the ethical, you know, although of course, yeah, there's the issue about, you know, exploited labor for the products that vegans eat. Also, you know, it's no, what's the term? No ethical consumption under capitalism. It's difficult, you know. Anyway, I do want to say I do appreciate that we can be super annoying when we preach these values, you know. And I don't know. I guess I just think that it's more important to be on the right side than necessarily not be annoying. And oh, I'm doing it right now.